Fellas, today we have an interview breakdown with Bungie and two developers that went into great depths on the future of Destiny 2. One being Vivian Becks, the other being Proctor, which we've seen multiple times. Guys, today we're going to be unpacking everything from this interview, but if you're interested in watching this thing in its totality, feel free to check out the link in the description below. With that being said, let's jump right into it. Starting with Elemental Perks. Elemental Perks was actually brought up at 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and when it comes to these new quote-unquote Elemental Perks that use subclass verbs, things like Incandescent, Volt Shot, etc., Becks says that they are trying to synergize abilities with weapons, and that these perks help characterize a weapon, which is what they're going for. Now, perks that work with subclasses are very unlikely to change fundamentally, but we could be seeing some duration changes, and Bungie plans to focus on flexibility and ease of use when it comes to these perks. Now, 14 minutes and 40 seconds, weapon Foundry Traits were brought up, and this is actually arguably the biggest splash from this interview. Essentially, multiple new weapon Foundry Origin traits are coming in the next few seasons. Now, this leads to a lot of speculation. Could be black armory weapons, could be text mechanical weapons, castoid weapons, etc. And we actually did an entire video breaking down all the different various foundries. But thinking back to the video we made over a year ago, where we talk about how much we miss black armory weapons. Guys, I can't help but get excited about the idea of getting these weapons back. Can you imagine not only getting black armory weapons back, but getting them back with a specific origin trait tied to that foundry? Now, while we're still speculating, we could just be getting a brand new foundry. Since we're going to be in a new destination in Lightfall, Neptune, and the city Neomuna, chances are they have at least one different weapon foundry here. Now, if you want to break your tinfoil hats out, a little bit of speculation time. In the Speed Metal Ghost Shell, there's actually a line that talks about Atmo gear. Maybe Atmo as a new foundry. Big shout out to Jared for calling this one out. Whatever the case may be, there are certain foundries that have made nothing but exotic weapons. I don't necessarily think we're going to get exotic weapons with origin traits. That would just make them, well, kind of busted. However, certain foundries that make nothing but exotics, perhaps maybe they'll actually dabble in certain legendaries. I don't know. We'll see. Moving on to 19 minutes, Enhanced Adepts. Now, starting in the Lightfall raid, you'll be able to find enhanced traits on adept weapons from the raid, but you won't be able to craft these enhanced traits on them. There will be more of a chase to getting these. Now, the plan is to update adepts within the raids first, and later they might, and I mean might in bold, think about the ability to get enhanced traits on other adepts, like from Nightfalls and Trials. Now, obviously, this creates an issue of like power creep, holy hell, cross. How can they add enhanced traits to weapons that are already going to be difficult to get, and on top of that, they're adept? Fellas, this is the only way you're going to actually give value to these adept weapons, at least the raid adept weapons, right? When there's already an original version of these weapons with enhanced traits, and then you have just this basic plain old Jane adept weapon with no enhanced traits, well, obviously you're going to choose the former. This right here, though, is interesting as you won't be able to craft them. Instead, you actually have to do the activity. So in some ways, crafting really is not the end game here, guys. It's still going for loot, a looter shooter. And that's been kind of the debate now for quite some time. I love weapon crafting, but there's a lot of people that state that the magic of Destiny was lost due to weapon crafting and that it should be a looter first. Now, 25 minutes, original adepts were also brought up. The idea behind adepts at first was for them to just look different, like the same weapon, but with unique looks and shaders to them, which by the way, we hate it. Celerity was by no means valuable. But then Bungie was like, maybe we can add a little bit of gameplay changes. And then what happened was the community cared a lot more about adepts, more than Bungie expected. And then players wanted them to be more than what they are. Now, 26 minutes, Proctor continued by stating that they will probably look at the weapon mod system in the future for a possible revamp, but it's going to be post Lightfall. Now, we do know certain mods are getting deprecated, things like Rampage Spec, Surrounded Spec. It's going to be just built into the mods themselves. However, does this actually lead us to a potential mod system 3.0? And for some of my folks out there that are new players that don't have access to combat mods, this is even outside of weapon mods, I think some of you probably would rather a mod system 3.0. We'll see though. Moving on to 31 minutes and 25 seconds. This was about Divinity. And essentially, you will be able to apply Divinity's precision cage with a higher active weaken like tether. So you're still going to be able to combo both of these effects. And the team has playtested this multiple times, so it should work. Again, quotes, should work. This stemmed from the topic of Divinity's nerf, as it's seeing a 15% decrease in its weaken effect from 30% to now 15%. Now, in the past, this was an issue because it would overwrite certain debuffs. What they're trying to say right here is that it should actually allow you to stack, but not necessarily stack. One will replace the other. At least from my understanding, one should replace the other. So the higher debuff will take precedence over the lower debuff. Just like in our buff system, the higher buff takes precedence over the weaker buff. Now, 36 minutes and 10 seconds, there was some bugs brought up about Divinity, and apparently Divinity wasn't working correctly with rewind rounds and Cloud Strike. Those bugs have been fixed. 36 minutes and 40 seconds, damage stacking was brought up, and Bungie's philosophy is that multiplicative damage stacking is an enormous pain in the ass. And they wanted to address it because it causes a lot of problems, but it's a huge undertaking. And this is actually something they started way back when. They discussed using diminishing returns with damage stacking, and they discussed putting a cap on stacking. Like you wouldn't be able to do, say for instance, 200% extra damage, and under no circumstances can you go over that cap. And this of course is just an example. And this is obviously something that causes issues for Bungie because they hate actually waking up and seeing thumbnails of us one-shotting bosses with a mini hammer, even though we love it. Now, Chris Proctor personally likes the idea of switching from multiplicative damage stacking to additive damage stacking. For example, if you add two 100% debuffs, you end up with 300% instead of 400%. That way, things can keep stacking, but it'll be much harder to hit those crazy damage stacks. Now, again, this is something Bungie's done in the past. Everything used to be multiplicative. Starting from Shadowkey, we moved away from that and started to go to like additive, cumulative. I swear, man, I can't word. But yes, we were actually going in that direction for quite some time. But granted, we have some outliers. Like if you remember back in the day, dude, there was no cap on how many buffs and debuffs stacked. It was like, yo, however many you want to apply, go right ahead. Now, Chris says this is a big project and a problem area that they are planning to tackle eventually. But in the short term, some of the larger multipliers will probably end up just being toned down. So expect nerfs. That's what I would actually take from that, guys. It's like a nice way of saying, hey, you know that thing you really like to use a lot? Yeah, that thing go bye-bye. Yeah! 39 minutes and 20 seconds. Elemental verb interactions with exotics. Now, every single exotic weapon does not need to synergize with build crafting or with subclass 3.0 verbs. Some exotic weapons can and will stand on their own, but there are a lot of plans to bring these verbs to exotic weapons where it makes the most sense. Now, no specific exotics were actually mentioned, but think like Sunshot, Symmetry, Ruinous Effigy, Queenbreaker's Bow. All of these could really benefit from 3.0 verbs. Imagine having a two-tailed fox getting both Void 3.0 and Solar 3.0 verbs synergizing with it. Sounds disgusting. Now, 44 minutes and 35 seconds, Enhanced Incandescent was brought up, and it was actually stated that Enhanced Incandescent had a lot of issues. It ended up being better in some circumstances and worse in others due to a bug. It also messed with how Scorch works fundamentally, so they've been working on fixing it. Now, 46 minutes and 45 seconds, Kinetic Damage Type was brought up, and essentially Bungie's philosophy on Kinetic Damage Type is that they want it to be a proper damage type that has its own place in the sandbox alongside elemental weapons. They'll also be adjusting the damage type across weapons in Lightfall. Again, not something to be phased down here. It almost makes you wonder when you think about it. We have 3 elemental types in our energy slot: Solar, Arc, Void. And our first slot, or what we call our kinetic slot, you have Stasis and Kinetic. And I'm assuming Strand is going to be present there, or strand-based weapons. Does this actually lead us to think that a potential kinetic subclass could be coming to us? Maybe. I don't know. 48 minutes and 10 seconds, Quicksilver Storm was brought up. And again, this is the pre-order auto rifle for Lightfall. Essentially, the arc rocket that fires out of Quicksilver is a bug. It's not meant to be art, and it will be changed at some point. Proctor actually says to expect stuff like Quicksilver Storm and Lightfall because you'll be in a Neomuna setting. Also, Quicksilver Storm is getting a catalyst in Lightfall, so the arc rocket bug will be fixed before then. Now, this is somewhat of a nerf inside of things like Nightfalls, especially this season where you have so many arc burns. Granted, if the exotic catalyst ends up amplifying the auto rifle, we probably won't even miss that arc damage. Now, 49 minutes and 50 seconds, Synergy Perks. When creating weapon perks that interact with our subclasses, things like Volt Shot, Incandescent, Repulsor Brace, Chill Clip, etc., the devs start at the subclass verbs and then work their way down from there. They separate perks into 2 categories: utility and aggressive. They said that there are more elemental perks slated for the release in Lightfall, and this was actually mentioned later at 55 minutes and 42 seconds. The subject of ability spam comes up, and Becks states that Bungie's aware of how potent subclass builds are right now compared to our actual weapons, and are looking to keep the balance from straying too far in any direction. Now, there was no direct mention of nerfs here, but Bungie is definitely aware that abilities are very strong right now compared to our weapons. We actually talked about this here recently of just a Combatants 3.0 and updating enemy AI across the board and potentially adding an Iron Man mode to the game. Regardless though, interesting that that's how they separate the perks into those 2, utility and aggressive. Kind of gives us some idea of what to expect in the future, especially with Strand on the horizon. Now, moving on to 54 minutes and 17 seconds, Verb Perks was actually brought up, and it was asked if any Verb Perks were off the table. And Beck actually stated that they haven't crossed any verbs off the table to leverage as weapon perks on legendary weapons. And as long as they're able to put it on a weapon, it serves its intended purpose, and it's cool. And it's absolutely something they want to do. Now, this opens up so many opportunities in the future for interesting weapon perks. Imagine Volatile, Cure, or even a perk that makes you radiant. We already see some of these on exotics, but as a perk on a legendary weapon, talk about power creep. Again, this is why we need a Combatants 3.0. Now, 59 minutes and 40 seconds, support weapons were brought up. Will we see more support weapons like Illumina in the future? The answer to this is yeah. Proctor said that they are devoting more dev time to support roles in weapons, and we should actually see some more interesting options once Strand launches. Now, I know some of us don't want to play support. Dude, like every MMORPG, everyone wants to play DPS, but come on, shout out to my support players, right? For the guy out there that rocks Lumina, that keeps his team alive, that's constantly buffing. You, man, you're the hero. Now, 1 hour, 1 minute, and 15 seconds, Sweet Business was brought up. Now, funny enough, the subject of Sweet Business and its catalyst came up, and nothing solid here, just some ideas of how to enhance the weapon's current functionality. Will we see a Sweet Business meta in the future? Dude, I think people would lose their mind. Imagine if there was a way to like turn Sweet Business into like Bastion from Overwatch, and like after you get a kill, it turns into like a tank, but it makes you extremely stationary, right? But it's like a one-hit kill. But Cross, doesn't that break balance in PvP? Dude, I know. Okay, listen, this is where fantasy and logic have a hard time meeting in the middle. Now, at 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 20 seconds, random roll exotics got brought up. Now, the weapons team found the reception for customization was good, but the RNG wasn't as desirable. Again, adding more random rolls to something that is already hard to get, well, yeah, people are obviously going to dislike that. In the future, the focus will be on craftable exotic weapons like Osteostriga instead of random rolls like Hawkmoon and DMT. Personally, I love the way Osteostriga came out. I thought it tied really well for the story, helps us get involved with weapon crafting, and of course, the weapon itself, you got to change up all the different traits on it outside of its exotic traits, which was cool. That would make a huge difference on certain exotics, depending on PvE or PvP. Now, at 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 30 seconds, reprised Destiny 1 exotics got brought up, and of course, they gave us some insight here. They state that when bringing back Destiny 1 exotics, the work is often equal, if not more laborious than making a new exotic. And it was actually stated that Destiny 1 exotics usually receive an extra layer of exotic function added to make them viable in the Destiny 2 sandbox. Example includes things like Lord of Wolves, but I can give you other examples, like take Dorn, for instance. Dorn from D1 to D2 is a 9-day difference in potency. The only reason why Dorn was so good in D1 originally was because the weapon came out hot right from the get and did way too much poison damage. But of course, it got nerfs. But the way Soul Devour works now with Dorn, oh, much better, much greater fantasy than what it was back in D1. And again, the only people that used Dorn inside of Destiny 1 were PvP players. Now though, it's a PvE and PvP weapon. Have you tried it with necrotic grips? It's disgusting. Now, 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 50 seconds, weapon design was brought up. Now, when designing weapons for Destiny, the team takes at least 3 major passes to formulate the idea, make adjustments, and polish the weapon's feel, all while playtesting across the entire sandbox department and beyond. And not just the weapons team. For exotics, work needs to be put in by the concept artists, 3D artists, VFX, sound design, animation, and even encounter design teams whose work may be affected by how an exotic shifts the sandbox. Now, we've heard this before in previous podcasts, but per Chris Proctor, exotics are the single most expensive pieces of content that designers make. Designers work on each season for about 3 months, and exotics take half that time to develop, compared to legendary perks, which can take just a few days. So keep that in mind, guys. Personally, I like the cadence of exotics that we get. Look, yes, Bungie can dump a lot of different exotics on us, but in the past, we've been in those situations where it's like, okay, a fraction of these are actually worth the damn. The rest of these are garbage. I would prefer exotics that are brought to us season to season, synergize well with our subclass 3.0s, whatever that may be, is viable in either PvE or in PvP. Now, at 1 hour, 23 seconds, Origin Traits was brought up again. And it was actually stated that when designing Origin Traits for events and seasonal weapons, it's actually much easier for the weapons team to tailor stronger traits for a subset of weapons instead of the entire sandbox. However, they don't like to make an event weapon Origin trait too strong. Otherwise, folks would be upset that it's only obtainable 3 months out of the year. Now, granted, we've heard of legacy focusing, so maybe that will fix that. And of course, those Origin traits can have that level of potency. To me, though, I think this year they've done a really good job of allowing us to go back to previous seasons and earn those weapons, right? So I think they can actually open the cap up a little more on the lethality of some of these Origin traits. Now, 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 45 seconds, it was stated that the narrative team does get involved with the weapons team in the creation of exotics, and weapons like Delicate Tomb, naturally over the design process, actually changed completely from its initial concept to its final release. Now, Mylan actually had a great video diving into the lore surrounding Delicate Tomb, so if you want to get more info, a link to that video will be in the description below. Now, 1 hour and 27 seconds, 1,000 voices was brought up. Bungie essentially said that they are quote-unquote fiddling with 1,000 voices to give it solid 3.0 interactions. Now listen, nothing's guaranteed here, but we may see 1,000 voices be more viable in the future. Can you imagine 1,000 voices applying Scorch Ignition? What the hell, man? Now, it was also mentioned that currently next season, though, 27 exotics are slated to be reworked in some way or another, which is crazy, man. So guys, that was the interview. Again, big shout out to Chris Proctor and Vivian Becks, as well as Impetus, St. Caber, Court, Kucha for organizing and hosting this interview. These developer podcasts are some of our favorite pieces of content to cover, and we love being able to see behind the curtain here and the future of Destiny in the coming months. And again, if you want to listen to Players vs. Enemy podcasts or read through the entire full transcript for yourself, we'll have linked to those in the description below. below. Guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you like this one, a like is greatly appreciated. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.